Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nick Tiffany's movie reviews in the podcast form. Today, we're getting into the business. We're talking Magic Mike, His Last Dance, the third and final film in our Magic Mike trilogy, directed by Steven Soderbergh and starring none other than Magic Mike himself, Channing Tatum. You know, obviously everyone has their own thoughts on Magic Mike. Some people think they're just movies about male strippers. They're not totally wrong. Some people think they're just an entertaining time. They're not wrong. And some people think that, underneath all of that, underneath the washboard abs, there are actually some pretty genuine and good stories, whether it's of male friendship or self-actualization and trying to figure out what you're doing in your life. And so after Magic Mike XXL, I really wasn't sure how they could top that movie. Alex Pettyfer had a pretty famous falling out with Channing Tatum during the filming of the first movie, which is why he was not invited back. It was not a part of the ruckus and the romping across America and America's greatest strip shows like we saw our boys do last time. And so, going into this last movie, I didn't totally expect, a similar path for our characters, but I didn't expect that this movie would pretty much just be about Mike himself. We get a few cameos from Joe Manganiello, a couple of the other guys, Matt Bomer, Tarzan. They get like a couple minutes here and there, but for the most part, by and large, this is a story about Mike. And kind of looking at where he's at 40 years old, the pandemic's going on, and Mike's kind of lost his business. And all that's kind of clear to us is his buddies kind of helped him go in on something legit. He wasn't able to make it work, but, he feels indebted to them one way or another. And so he's gigging. He's bartending down in Florida, any event he can get. And that kind of lands him working a gig for this woman, Maxandra. And, she's this huge socialite, multi-millionaire, married to but perhaps in the middle of a contentious divorce, of another very wealthy gentleman over in England. But she's living at her Florida home. She's throwing a charity event. Mike's working the bar, passes off some pretty good, brief life advice to her as he's setting up. You can tell he's kind of got eyes for Salma Hayek's character there, but, you can also tell that she might have eyes for him. But no, he's working. He's just the bartender. And it's not until a young woman comes along and recognizes Mike, way, way back from his cop days and her sorority days. And she kind of puts in a word to Maxine because she's been, Max has been stressed. She's been dealing with a lot. Everything that's crumbling is back home in London. And so she's holding on to anything that she's got here. And as Mike's packing up, when things are all said and done at the end of the party, he gets an invitation in to talk with Max. The bartender, your presence is requested. I'm sure, like most people, we kind of had an idea of what might be coming next. And, they've got they've got fantastic chemistry throughout the whole movie, Channing and Salma Hayek. Really believable, I don't want to necessarily say start of a relationship, but the two of them, the closeness they're exhibiting, the tender moments they share, the really raunchy, really sexual moments that they share, that energy. It's matched so well. And what starts out as what you think might just be like, oh, this is probably just going to be a fun little dance for her. It's just going to be a good time. Well, it was a good time, obviously. It was a really good time. I mean, it practically looked like they were having sex on land. He's like, all right, are these things sturdy over here? Can I hold you up and dance around you on that? Well, cool. I'm gonna. Let's move these plants over here. And one thing these movies, I think, still do really well is they take themselves pretty seriously. It's totally fine to giggle. My fiance and I were watching together, and so many moments in the scene. It's not that it's uncomfortable. It's one of those deals where obviously you don't see it a lot, and you're like, whoa, what did he just do there? What is, like, whoa, what am I watching? It's getting a little steamy, you know. But just immediately from the start of the film, you know, it's clear that their interaction is something more than just, hey, you know, I heard you're a dancer. Could you just kind of cheer me up? I'm having a rough time. And, you know, this experience just kind of transcends things for Max. And she gets the brilliant idea to bring Magic Mike out to London, put on a show at the theater that she's fighting for in her divorce, and turn an old classic into something unheard of in the world of theater. You know, she wants Mike to come in. She wants him to direct, which was also an interesting kind of spin on things. She wants him to help direct a take on, I think it's Isabella Sen's, this old classic tale of a woman having to choose between, you know, the snobby old rich man or the poor man who's given her heart. And the film kind of takes shape around the idea of female empowerment, which is not new for these movies. You know, a lot of these films are focusing on women, whether it's women's pleasure, entertaining women, you know, empowering women, like Jada Pinkett Smith did in the last movie. You know, so Salma Hayek will have a role. She's producing, so she's going to have ideas of her own, but she really, 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 well, she wants to get back at her ex, but she really wants to create something unlike anybody's experienced. And so that's kind of how we segue into our story. Can Mike craft a show that not only highlights dance, but can capture some of those sensual, sexual moments? And what follows, I was really genuinely surprised by how invested I was in the story, by how seriously they take the characters and their relationship, working relationship for the most part, but looking at two people who are in a place by themselves, you know, whether it's they feel that no one quite understands them or maybe no one believes in them, which is a pretty common theme for Mike. You know, they want to show something. They want to show that they're worth something. They want to show that they can create something that's lasting, that'll have people talking, that will be seen as art. And so the movie segues really into being a lot about an appreciation for dance in a lot of different forms, whether it's the physique that you have to have, the talents you can display, the athleticism. How can we find the best dancers and put them in a show? You know, essentially, how are we going to turn the best dancers into strippers? Because Mike's like, I already got strippers. I got guys who can dance. I know what to look for. But, you know, Salma Hayek, she's like, there's got to be something more. It can't just be about the stripping and the dancing. I want to watch. I want to see something elegant, as well as something sexual. And so it just, you know, it leads to a lot of really interesting conversations about dance's place in the world. You know, we get narration from Salma Hayek's daughter in the movie, you know, who kind of plays that. You know, she's not an obnoxious kid in the movie by any means, but is observing, you know, oh yeah, Mom, I'm sure you're just helping this guy make a play. That's why he's staying in our house. I'm sure that there's nothing going on there. You know, she kind of knows what's going on. But she is our narrator for the movie, and is kind of taking us sometimes through the history of dance, rituals, and the language, and everything that it can really mean, and how you can tell stories through dance and show emotion and vulnerability. And in some cultures, you would have to dance before you could be promised and married to somebody. And, you know, you had to be expressive with love, with life, with joy, sadness, and sorrow, all these different things. And it was really interesting to listen to. Didn't always necessarily feel like it had a place in the story. Because for all the incredible dancing and dance sequences and choreography in the movie, which there's a lot of, you know, there are just some moments that feel like, not quite like a dead end, but, you know, what are we, you know, sort of pick a lane. What are we talking about here? Are we going to go with the fact that we need dance and it's going to be more sensual, sexual, or are we looking for a more athletic performer? And it's clear that this guy can dance, but can he dance on this chair? Can he dance around her? Can he make her feel special? And so part of the film is watching that evolution, and can we turn these guys into sex machines, and can we turn them into someone, who can grant a woman her wildest fantasies? And just kind of like the last movie, and the movie before it, this film really does highlight that, the pleasure is for anyone. It's not just young co-eds, it's not young moms, it's not the hottest people in the world all the time, whatever, with the most, the most illustrious people. No. Dance, love, all these languages are universal. And so the film does a really fun job, I think, of highlighting that sometimes, whether it's the younger guys dancing with the really older women, and not always in that sexual way, but, in fun, different ways that appeal to, again, just that, they make a great reference to not necessarily just Swan Lake, but the Swan as a whole, and just how elegant it is to watch and behold. And, there's definitely something to be said for watching incredible performance. And so in a lot of ways, there's just so many funny, enjoyable scenes, because little 80-year-old Darla is being hauled up on stage while Permission's playing in the background, and she's getting kissed up and down the arms and getting her legs spread apart as this guy comes and wiggles his body all around. I mean, it's funny, it's entertaining, and it's when I feel like these movies are probably at their best, because it genuinely does feel like everybody involved is having a good time. It feels like they're accomplishing their goal. So largely, despite not being as action heavy, maybe as hilarious and as breezy as Magic Mike XXL, which I still think would be the best in the series, I think Magic Mike, His Last Dance, this third film, is probably right behind XXL, though, because it really is an interesting study of Mike and, him trying to open himself up to love and open himself up to creating something as well. As a constant through all three films, everybody has these opinions of him and has these thoughts about what he's probably capable of or not so capable of, giving his profession. Oh, he's a stripper. He probably doesn't know the Art Basel. Or he probably doesn't know this other language. He probably doesn't know so many of these snobby things that we're discussing because he's such a lowly stripping man. And it's weirdly enjoyable to kind of hear him snap back when he knows his shit, and when he knows, like, hey, before you judge me, I'm not just a dancer. I haven't had the passion for it maybe, but that's because you do lose sight of some of those things. When it just comes to entertainment, we just want Magic Mike. We just want this. We want that. But what does Magic Mike want? What does he want? And this movie gives you a pretty good idea of that, and his internal struggle, and trying to find a balance between a work and, art that he can create that he enjoys. And so I was definitely pleased by this film in the sense that it wasn't just like a COVID cash in. It was filmed during COVID, so I'm sure that's kind of what explains some of the limitations perhaps with the cast. But I think they wrote a great story about the character. Definitely more serious, a little less entertaining than the first two, but a worthwhile story. You're gonna laugh. Honestly, sometimes there is a whole choreographed scene that Channing Tatum does with a ballerina towards the end while it's raining and there's all this water they're kind of spinning around through and surfing around on. And it's extremely elegant. It's athletic. It's moving. My fiance and I, we got really into watching, I say we, I probably prompted it, watching a lot growing up, but we were watching Dancing with the Stars. And so many times, it's rare sometimes when you can see a performance that really just drops your jaw, that you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how someone could create something so beautiful, something so touching. But this film manages to do that more than a few times, in a few different ways, whether it was more on the sensual side, more on the sexual side, and more on a side of almost love. So I was just really, really surprised by this film more than anything. Surprised how much I enjoyed it. Surprised in the direction they took it. I think they do another great job, obviously, getting their soundtrack together. It's always been something that they do well, in terms of how they kind of style some of their dances to different songs. And so I don't know. Salma Hayek was fantastic. The acting all around was, just incredibly enjoyable. You could watch this home. You can watch this film at home on. I think I got it through Vudu. They were doing a whole package deal. It was like all 3 Magic Mikes. It's like $10 or $15, and so it was like, oh, even the new one that just came out in theaters. So even though it's not in theaters anymore and it's not out on DVD yet, you can still own it or you can still watch it, and I think it's worth your while. That's the one. It's the weird upside to, still coming out of some of this COVID pandemic theater streaming type stuff. It was never a huge film. It's definitely not an expensive film, I think, as compared to the last two even. And in that same breath, it might not stay in theaters that long. You might not have the budget to market it as long. But hopefully it finds some legs on streaming or on digital. If you need a good little movie for the night, you're great. You can watch it with your girls. You can watch it with the adult family. It's never so crazy that you're just like, oh gosh, I can't believe we're watching this. Just like the other two, it's a pretty fun time. And anybody who feels shame enjoying a Magic Mike movie, whoever you are, don't feel it. Don't let it win. These are good movies, and they deserve to be seen. It's Steven Soderbergh. I'm like, there's even moments where Magic Mike's Last Dance gets a little Oceans from time to time. So I think it is worth your while. Go see it. Watch it at home. Enjoy the hell out of it. And we'll see you for the next show. Thanks, you guys.